In the year 1870, a 31-year-old individual residing in Cleveland, Ohio, exerted dominion over 4% of the nation's entire oil refining output. By 1880, this control had escalated to a staggering 90%. Then, by 1904, his influence extended to 91% of all oil extraction, 85% of final sales, and he had effectively authored the blueprint for every monopolistic entity that exists today. This formidable figure was none other than John D. Rockefeller. The sophisticated framework he meticulously constructed, the corporate architectures he pioneered, and the monopolistic strategies he honed did not vanish with the dissolution of Standard Oil in 1911. Instead, they adapted, they proliferated, and they continue to shape your existence profoundly even now in the year 2025. The fuel you purchase, the medications you obtain, the digital platforms you navigate, the sustenance you consume, and the financial institutions from which you borrow. Each one operates according to the principles established by Rockefeller. These principles encompass vertical integration, ensuring control over every facet of production, horizontal consolidation, aiming to absorb or eliminate rivals, regulatory capture, influencing governmental bodies, the utilization of tax-exempt foundations to steer public discourse and policy, and market dominance so absolute that any semblance of competition is rendered utterly impossible. Rockefeller's ambition transcended the mere creation of an oil empire. He engineered the very architecture of modern corporate dominance, and there is no feasible escape from this system, for its essence lies not in the name Standard Oil, but in the methodology itself. This methodology has been emulated by every dominant corporation for a century and a half. Amazon employs it, Google utilizes it, Pfizer adheres to it, JP Morgan practices it. All have learned from the identical master plan, the Rockefeller paradigm: control the entire supply chain from top to bottom, eradicate competitors through consolidation, subjugate regulatory bodies, leverage philanthropic endeavors to acquire an aura of legitimacy, and should the government eventually dismantle your enterprise, ensure that the constituent parts you retain are more valuable than the original whole. Allow me to elucidate precisely how Rockefeller erected this edifice of control, how he leveraged it to become the wealthiest individual in recorded history, why the divestiture of Standard Oil ultimately augmented his fortune, and why, even after 114 years since that enforced separation, you continue to inhabit a world meticulously designed by Rockefeller. This understanding is not merely an academic pursuit, it is a matter of essential survival. The system is engineered to siphon wealth from the populace and concentrate it at the apex. Once you comprehend its mechanics, you will perceive its pervasive presence everywhere. John Davidson Rockefeller entered this world on the 8th of July, 1839, in Richford, New York. His father, a charlatan who peddled fraudulent cures for ailments, possessed a remarkable aptitude for deception. His mother, a devout adherent of the Baptist faith, instilled in him a sense of moral rectitude. This peculiar confluence of the conman's unyielding ruthlessness and the Baptist's unshakable certainty in their own righteousness would profoundly shape Rockefeller's entire business philosophy. He would systematically dismantle his competitors with an almost palpable lack of mercy, all the while harboring a genuine conviction that Providence had ordained him to bring order and efficiency to the industrial landscape for the betterment of humanity. This was not a display of hypocrisy, but rather a deeply held belief that his monopolistic enterprise was morally justified, serving to impose structure upon rampant chaos and eliminate egregious waste. In the year 1859, the discovery of oil in Titusville, Pennsylvania, ignited an unprecedented oil rush. Thousands of hopeful prospectors descended upon western Pennsylvania, driven by the dream of striking it rich. Fortunes were amassed and obliterated with breathtaking speed. It was a period of utter pandemonium, characterized by explosive growth followed by dramatic decline. Excessive extraction led to plummeting prices, only for subsequent shortages to send them soaring once more. Rockefeller, then a 20-year-old bookkeeper in Cleveland, perceived not an opportunity in the volatile and luck-dependent realm of drilling, but rather in the lucrative business of refining crude oil into kerosene, the essential illuminant of the era. This, he recognized, was the true source of enduring profit. In 1863, Rockefeller invested $4,000 in his inaugural oil refinery in Cleveland. Within a mere 2 years, it had ascended to become the largest refining operation in the city. However, Cleveland itself boasted 30 refineries, fostering an environment of cutthroat competition and razor-thin profit margins, with most operations teetering on the brink of insolvency. This precarious landscape provided the crucible for Rockefeller's exceptional intellect to emerge. He eschewed the futile pursuit of competing solely on price. His objective was the complete eradication of competition itself. His chosen instrument for achieving this was a methodology that would ultimately form the bedrock of American corporate enterprise: vertical integration. Vertical integration signifies absolute control over every stage of the production process. While the majority of refineries merely processed crude oil, purchasing it from drillers, refining it, and then selling the resultant kerosene to distributors, thereby controlling only a single segment of the value chain, Rockefeller envisioned something far more comprehensive. He resolved to command every single step. He acquired the barrel manufacturing facilities, thereby obviating the need to procure barrels from external suppliers. He purchased tank cars and secured ownership of rail lines to transport his oil autonomously. He invested in his own warehousing infrastructure for storage. He established his own distribution networks to facilitate direct sales to consumers. Every stage that had previously constituted an independent business, generating profit for others, was brought under Rockefeller's direct purview. This consolidation afforded him immense cost advantages. Whereas his competitors incurred 25 cents for each barrel acquired from barrel makers, Rockefeller's in-house production cost a mere 15 cents. While rivals paid exorbitant fees to railroads for oil transportation, Rockefeller, through his ownership of tank cars and his negotiation of clandestine rebates, effectively had railroads compensate him for transporting his oil while simultaneously charging his competitors premium rates. This strategy transcended mere efficiency. It was unequivocally predatory. Rockefeller could afford to market his kerosene at prices that systematically drove competitors out of business, all while still maintaining healthy profit margins. And this, with chilling precision, is precisely what he proceeded to do. By the year 1870, Rockefeller had formally established the Standard Oil Company of Ohio. His refining capacity had burgeoned from a single modest facility to the largest refining operation globally. Yet his share of American refining capacity remained at a mere 4%. This was insufficient for his grand design. Consequently, Rockefeller embarked upon the second phase of his meticulously crafted strategy: horizontal integration. If vertical integration involves mastering the entirety of the supply chain, horizontal integration entails the acquisition or obliteration of every competing entity. In 1872, Rockefeller initiated what historical accounts refer to as the Cleveland Massacre. Over a period of 3 months, Rockefeller systematically approached every refinery owner in Cleveland. He presented them with offers to purchase their businesses. Those who acquiesced were compensated at fair market value and often retained their positions as managers within the burgeoning enterprise. Those who declined faced a relentless price war. Rockefeller would unilaterally slash the price of kerosene below his production costs. His competitors, lacking the economies of scale and integrated infrastructure to match his cost efficiencies, incurred losses on every sale. They were presented with a stark choice: capitulate and sell to Rockefeller, or face inevitable bankruptcy. The vast majority succumbed. A determined few resisted, but all ultimately failed. By the conclusion of 1872, Rockefeller held sway over 25 of Cleveland's 26 refineries. His dominion over American refining capacity had dramatically expanded from 4% to 25% within a mere 3 months. This became the definitive blueprint: extend an offer of acquisition. If refused, systematically dismantle the opposition through economic warfare, and then absorb the remnants. This modus operandi would be adopted across virtually every industry by every subsequent monopoly, for the ensuing century and a half. However, Rockefeller's aspirations extended far beyond the confines of Cleveland. He sought dominion over the entire nation. Throughout the 1870s, Rockefeller relentlessly expanded Standard Oil's reach across America. He acquired refineries in key urban centers such as New York, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore. The same ruthless tactics were deployed universally. Secret railroad rebates dramatically reduced his shipping expenditures compared to his rivals. Vertical integration ensured his production costs were the lowest attainable, and relentless price wars served to annihilate any entity that dared to resist his overtures of acquisition. By 1879, Standard Oil commanded an astonishing 90% of America's refining capacity. 90%. This was not merely a business, it was a complete and utter monopoly. Yet it is at this juncture that Rockefeller's true genius became profoundly apparent. He keenly understood that monopolies faced two principal challenges. Firstly, they were inherently illegal. The Sherman Antitrust Act, enacted in 1890 specifically to dismantle such monopolistic power, loomed as a significant threat. Secondly, they engendered widespread public animosity. Rockefeller was reviled, branded a robber baron, a cruel tyrant, and the most detested individual in America. Rockefeller sought a solution to both these pressing issues, and he found it: the trust. In 1882, Rockefeller's legal strategist devised the Standard Oil Trust. Its ingenious mechanism functioned as follows. While Standard Oil of Ohio was legally precluded from owning companies situated in other states, a trust possessed this authority. Rockefeller established a trust that held the collective stock of all Standard Oil entities. Control was vested in the hands of a mere 41 shareholders, all of whom were Rockefeller himself and his most trusted associates. This trust, in turn, exercised absolute control over all the subsidiary companies. This marked the genesis of the first major corporate trust in American history, and it rapidly became the universally adopted model for every trust that followed, including the Sugar Trust, the Tobacco Trust, and the Still Trust, all of which emulated Rockefeller's groundbreaking structure. The trust enabled Rockefeller to maintain a nationwide monopoly while ostensibly adhering to state-sanctioned legal frameworks. More significantly, however, it created a novel legal entity. The trust was not classified as a producing company. Rather, it functioned as a holding company, its sole purpose being the ownership of other enterprises. This structural innovation would eventually evolve into the modern corporation, characterized by a parent company overseeing numerous subsidiaries such as Berkshire Hathaway, Alphabet, and Meta, all direct descendants of Rockefeller's pioneering trust model. By 1904, Standard Oil controlled a commanding 91% of American oil refining and 85% of final sales. Rockefeller had ascended to the status of the world's wealthiest individual with a net worth of $900 million, equivalent to $25 billion in contemporary monetary terms. However, this represented merely nominal wealth. At his zenith in 1913, Rockefeller's net worth, adjusted for inflation, approximated $400 billion, surpassing the combined fortunes of Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Bill Gates, solidifying his position as the wealthiest individual in modern history. He amassed this colossal fortune through the very system he had so meticulously engineered: vertical integration, horizontal consolidation, and the masterful deployment of legal structures to centralize control. This was the quintessential system. Yet public sentiment was increasingly turning against the unchecked power of monopolies. In 1890, Congress enacted the Sherman Antitrust Act, explicitly outlawing monopolistic practices. In 1906, the investigative journalist Ida Tarbell published The History of the Standard Oil Company, a scathing exposé of Rockefeller's Machiavellian tactics, including secret railroad rebates, predatory pricing, and the ruthless crushing of competitors. The public outcry was immense and unavoidable. In 1911, the Supreme Court delivered a landmark ruling declaring Standard Oil an illegal monopoly and mandating its dissolution into 34 separate entities. This pivotal decision, however, did not signal the demise of Rockefeller's system. Rather, it marked the beginning of its intricate evolution. Upon the breakup of Standard Oil, Rockefeller retained significant shareholdings in all 34 newly independent companies. Standard Oil of New Jersey transformed into Exxon. Standard Oil of New York became Mobil. Standard Oil of California rebranded as Chevron. Standard Oil of Indiana evolved into Amoco. Standard Oil of Ohio became Sohio, later acquired by BP. Far from diminishing Rockefeller's fortune, this enforced divestiture actually amplified it. Prior to the breakup, Standard Oil stock was valued at approximately $600 per share. Post-dissolution, the aggregate value of all 34 constituent companies soared to over $2,000 per share. Rockefeller's wealth effectively tripled. The rationale? The mandated competition among these newly formed entities spurred innovation and enhanced operational efficiency. Furthermore, the act of fragmenting a single monopoly into 34 entities, each retaining dominant positions within their respective regional markets, was merely a superficial reorganization, not a genuine dismantling of monopolistic power. Today, the majority of these 34 companies have strategically remerged. Exxon and Mobil united in 1999. Chevron acquired Standard Oil of Kentucky and Gulf Oil. BP absorbed Amoco in Ohio. The Standard Oil monopoly, ostensibly broken up in 1911, has effectively reconsolidated into the colossal entities of ExxonMobil, Chevron, and BP. The system engineered a strategic self-divestiture to circumvent regulatory scrutiny, only to quietly reassemble itself over the course of more than a century. However, Standard Oil represents only a fraction of Rockefeller's enduring legacy. His most profound and lasting contribution is the system itself, the methodologies, the organizational structures, the comprehensive playbook. Let me illustrate how this system continues to be actively deployed in the present day. Amazon meticulously employs vertical integration with a precision mirroring Rockefeller's original strategy. Initially a humble online bookseller, Amazon now commands the entirety of the supply chain. It owns its warehouses, its sophisticated logistics network, its fleet of delivery vehicles, its payment processing systems, and even the crucial cloud infrastructure that hosts the websites of its competitors. Amazon Web Services, or AWS, generates an astounding $90 billion in annual revenue, a figure that surpasses Amazon's retail profit margins. Rockefeller controlled refineries, railroads, and distribution channels. Amazon, in the 21st century, controls retail, logistics, and cloud computing. It is the same playbook, simply adapted to a new era. Amazon also actively engages in horizontal consolidation, systematically acquiring its competitors. Its portfolio includes Whole Foods, Zappos, Twitch, Ring, MGM Studios, and well over 100 other acquisitions. When direct acquisition is not feasible, Amazon resorts to replicating successful competitor products and undercutting their prices, leveraging data gleaned from its own vast marketplace. Third-party sellers are compelled to report their sales data to Amazon. Amazon then meticulously analyzes this information, identifies lucrative products, develops its own Amazon Basics alternatives, and aggressively promotes them above the original offerings. This represents the modern iteration of Rockefeller's predatory price wars, operating within the bounds of legality, barely regulated, and proving devastatingly effective. Google has adopted the trust structure pioneered by Rockefeller. Alphabet, its parent company, functions as a holding entity overseeing a diverse array of subsidiaries including Google, YouTube, Waymo, DeepMind, and Verily, among dozens of others. This organizational model closely mirrors the Standard Oil Trust, a single parent entity exercising dominion over multiple operating companies. Such a structure provides a shield against liability, facilitates strategic tax optimization across various jurisdictions, and renders regulatory dissolution exceedingly complex given that each subsidiary operates as a technically independent entity. Pharmaceutical giants employ Rockefeller's strategy of regulatory capture with remarkable efficacy. Rockefeller did not merely compete within established markets. He actively manipulated the very rules of the game. He lobbied fervently for railroad regulations that would specifically benefit Standard Oil. He collaborated with politicians to establish kerosene standards that his refineries could readily meet while presenting insurmountable obstacles for his competitors. Today, pharmaceutical corporations engage in analogous practices. They contribute substantial funding to the Food and Drug Administration through user fees. They lobby relentlessly for extended patent protections. They actively participate in drafting the very regulations by which they are ostensibly governed. Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Merck. These companies have all learned from Rockefeller's example. Control the regulators, and you effectively control the market. The financial sector has enthusiastically embraced holding company structures. JP Morgan Chase, for instance, operates as a holding company that encompasses Chase Bank, JP Morgan Investment Bank, and a multitude of other subsidiaries. Bank of America, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo all utilize similar holding company architectures. When the Dodd-Frank Act was implemented in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, the complexities inherent in the holding company structure made effective regulation nearly impossible. The crucial question arose: which entity should be regulated, the parent corporation or its numerous subsidiaries? Rockefeller himself had ingeniously resolved this very quandary back in 1882. Banks, a century later, simply adopted his proven solution. And then there is philanthropy, perhaps Rockefeller's most innovative and enduring contribution. In 1913, Rockefeller established the Rockefeller Foundation, seeding it with an initial endowment of $250 million, an amount equivalent to over $7 billion today. The foundation directed its considerable resources towards medical research, educational advancement, and public health initiatives. On the surface, these actions appeared to be acts of altruistic charity, Rockefeller generously contributing to society. However, a closer examination reveals a more strategic intent. The foundation provided Rockefeller with a mechanism to circumvent estate taxes. It granted him considerable influence over which universities received funding, thereby affording him indirect control over the curriculum and research agendas pursued by these institutions. It served as a potent tool for acquiring legitimacy. The man who had systematically destroyed thousands of competitors was now hailed as a benevolent philanthropist. The individual once regarded as the most hated man in America was transformed into a beloved benefactor. The Rockefeller Foundation played a pivotal role in shaping the very foundations of modern medical education. It provided crucial funding for institutions such as Johns Hopkins University, the University of Chicago, and Rockefeller University. It established the paradigm for medical schools that prioritize pharmaceutical interventions over a more holistic approach to patient care. This is not conjecture, it is a matter of thoroughly documented historical fact. The foundation profoundly influenced the trajectory of American medicine, steering it towards a model that favored pharmaceutical solutions, a model that proved immensely profitable for pharmaceutical companies, many of which traced their origins to the chemical divisions of Standard Oil. In the contemporary landscape, virtually every billionaire employs the Rockefeller playbook. Bill Gates, through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, a behemoth with $75 billion in assets, funds global health initiatives, shapes public policy, and exerts considerable influence over national governments. Mark Zuckerberg established the Chan-Zuckerberg Initiative. Warren Buffett has pledged the vast majority of his fortune to the Gates Foundation. These philanthropic endeavors are not merely acts of charity, they represent sophisticated strategies for tax avoidance, the deliberate construction of enduring legacies, and the calculated exertion of policy influence. Rockefeller invented the model, and modern billionaires have elevated it to an art form. The Rockefeller family lineage continues to thrive, maintaining its significant influence. David Rockefeller, a grandson of John D., passed away in 2017 at the venerable age of 101. He held the esteemed position of chairman of Chase Manhattan Bank and was a co-founder of the Trilateral Commission, exerting his influence as one of the most powerful figures in global finance for half a century. The family's estimated wealth, valued at $11 billion, is meticulously distributed across hundreds of trusts and foundations, including the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, the Rockefeller Family Fund, and the David Rockefeller Fund. These entities continue to shape public policy, fund critical research, and exert influence on political discourse, a remarkable feat considering it has been 150 years since John D. Rockefeller initiated the Standard Oil enterprise. And here lies the most crucial realization: the system is not designed to be circumvented or escaped. Its very design is to remain invisible until one is irrevocably ensnared within its intricate web. You procure gasoline refined by ExxonMobil or Chevron, direct descendants of Standard Oil, or companies employing its foundational methods. You make purchases from Amazon, a company that expertly wields Rockefeller's principles of vertical integration and horizontal consolidation. You conduct online searches using Google, an entity structured as a trust, mirroring the original Standard Oil model. You rely on pharmaceuticals developed within a healthcare system profoundly shaped by grants from the Rockefeller Foundation. You conduct your banking with institutions that utilize the very same holding company structures pioneered by Rockefeller. And the taxes you diligently pay contribute to funding regulations that are effectively drafted by the very industries they are intended to oversee, precisely as Rockefeller envisioned. The system is inherently self-perpetuating. It facilitates the concentration of wealth at the top. It systematically eradicates any form of genuine competition. It exerts undue influence over regulatory bodies, and it skillfully employs philanthropy to project an image of benevolence and legitimacy while simultaneously evading taxation. This is the Rockefeller system, and it is not the product of some shadowy conspiracy. It is simply the ubiquitous reality of corporate structure, legally sanctioned, widely accepted, and consistently replicated by every dominant company across every major industry. You cannot purchase oil without engaging with entities descended from Standard Oil. You cannot effectively avoid Amazon's all-encompassing logistics network. You cannot opt out of the modern medical system so heavily influenced by Rockefeller Foundation grants. You cannot escape the banking system meticulously constructed upon Rockefeller's innovative holding company model. You reside within this system, and this system continuously extracts wealth from you on a daily basis, channeling it upwards to concentrate at the apex, precisely as Rockefeller meticulously designed it to function back in 1870. What fundamentally distinguishes Rockefeller from other so-called robber barons is the nature of their legacies. Andrew Carnegie, for instance, constructed steel mills. Upon his demise, U.S. Steel persisted, but Carnegie's personal dominion ceased. Cornelius Vanderbilt built extensive railway networks. After his death, the railroads continued to operate, albeit in a fragmented manner. J.P. Morgan forged vast financial empires. Post-mortem, his partners carried on his business, but his individual dominance eventually waned. Rockefeller, however, built a system. And systems, unlike individuals, do not perish with their creators. They evolve, they adapt, they propagate. Standard Oil was dismantled in 1911, but the principle of vertical integration permeated and transformed every industry. The trust structure evolved into the holding company. Regulatory capture morphed into sophisticated lobbying efforts. Philanthropy transformed into extensive foundation networks. Every component of Rockefeller's intricate system was meticulously copied, refined, and seamlessly integrated into corporate law, tax codes, and overarching regulatory frameworks. Rockefeller himself passed away in 1937, yet his system actually grew more robust and influential after his death, not because it was dependent on him as an individual, but because it had become deeply embedded in the very fabric of the economic and legal landscape. Let me illustrate the precise mechanism through which this system extracts wealth from you. You require gasoline, and you are presented with a limited selection: Exxon, Chevron, BP, Shell. These entities, all descendants of Standard Oil or practitioners of its methodologies, operate as price-coordinated oligopolies. Your choice is illusory. You are merely selecting among branches of the same venerable tree. You need to purchase products, and your options appear to be Amazon, Walmart, or Target. Amazon, through its masterful application of vertical integration, dominates the market. Walmart and Target are compelled to either match its colossal scale or face obsolescence. It is the same system, manifested through different corporate identities. You require internet search capabilities, and Google commands a remarkable 92% market share, surpassing even Standard Oil's peak of 91%. However, Google is not officially classified as a monopoly by regulators because its service is provided free of charge. The payment is rendered not in currency, but in your personal data. Rockefeller would have undoubtedly marveled at this innovation, a monopoly so complete that its users remain blissfully unaware that they are paying. You seek connection through social media, and you find Facebook, with its 3 billion users, along with its associated platforms, Instagram and WhatsApp, all under the umbrella of Meta. You are not choosing distinct platforms, you are selecting which Meta property to engage with, a clear demonstration of horizontal consolidation precisely as Rockefeller orchestrated. You require healthcare, and you consult a doctor trained within a system meticulously shaped by grants from the Rockefeller Foundation. You receive pharmaceuticals developed by companies that meticulously leverage patent protections, regulatory frameworks, and corporate structures originally pioneered by Standard Oil's chemical divisions. You pay insurance premiums to companies that operate using Rockefeller's established corporate structures. At every juncture, wealth is extracted. Every apparent choice is a carefully constructed illusion. The average American expends approximately $4,000 annually on gasoline, $3,000 on Amazon purchases, $5,000 on healthcare beyond insurance, and an additional $4,200 on internet and technology services. This amounts to a staggering $13,200 per year, flowing directly to corporations that meticulously employ Rockefeller's enduring system. Over a lifetime, this translates into a wealth transfer of $660,000, not to innovative startups or burgeoning small businesses, but to monopolistic corporations that continue to utilize 150-year-old tactics to stifle competition and maximize their profits. An escape from this pervasive system is, for all practical purposes, impossible. You could, in theory, refuse to purchase gasoline, but your livelihood and daily life necessitate transportation, making this an untenable option. You could eschew the use of Amazon, but its unparalleled pricing strategies and convenience render it virtually indispensable. You possess the option to disregard Google, yet what alternative boasts 92% of the market? You can steer clear of Facebook, but the fabric of social interaction is largely woven by Meta's digital threads. You might opt out of conventional pharmaceutical treatments, but the landscape of medical licensing, insurance accessibility, and societal acceptance is undeniably shaped by the enduring framework established by Rockefeller. This represents Rockefeller's paramount accomplishment, not his ascent to becoming history's most affluent individual, but his construction of an unyielding framework from which escape seems unattainable. It is a structure where every trajectory inevitably circles back to a centralized corporate dominion, a realm where nascent competition is systematically extinguished before it poses any threat to established titans, where regulatory bodies serve to shield incumbents rather than champion consumers, and where philanthropic endeavors skillfully cultivate influence that perpetuates the very system itself. This is the essence of the Rockefeller system, and whether you are cognizant of it or not, you are a participant within its intricate design. However, there is a profound insight that Rockefeller grasped, an understanding that eludes the majority. The system itself is not inherently malevolent, rather, it is a marvel of efficiency. Vertical integration slashes operational expenditures, while horizontal consolidation eradicates the redundancy of cutthroat competition. Regulatory capture ensures a predictable and stable operating environment, and endowed foundations provide the necessary funding for genuine scientific inquiry. The system functions, delivering goods and services with a speed, reliability, and affordability that chaotic, unfettered markets simply cannot match. Standard Oil, for instance, made kerosene an accessible commodity for ordinary Americans. Prior to Standard Oil's operational restructuring, kerosene fetched 58 cents per gallon. Following the implementation of its efficiencies, the price plummeted to 8 cents per gallon, a staggering 86% reduction. This is not an act of exploitation. It is the embodiment of sheer efficiency. Amazon expedites product delivery within 2 days. Google furnishes answers to inquiries in mere seconds. ExxonMobil orchestrates large-scale gasoline production, and Pfizer innovates life-saving medications. The system demonstrably delivers tangible value. The crux of the issue, therefore, is not its inherent ineffectiveness, but rather its tendency to amass immense wealth at the apex while disseminating the fruits of its efficiency at the base. You benefit from inexpensive fuel, swift deliveries, immediate information, and potent medical remedies, while Rockefeller's descendants accumulate trillions in amassed fortunes. Both of these realities coexist. So, what course of action should one adopt? How does one navigate a system that appears inescapable? Three principal avenues present themselves. Firstly, one can embrace it, recognize that consolidation and market dominance are intrinsic characteristics of advanced capitalism, not regrettable flaws. Leverage the efficiencies they inherently provide, patronize Amazon, utilize Google, and accept that wealth accumulation at the top is an inevitable outcome. Secondly, one can actively oppose it. Champion robust antitrust enforcement, choose to support smaller enterprises even when it entails a higher cost, and utilize alternative services even when they are less refined. Elect political representatives who pledge to dismantle monopolies, thereby rendering the system less efficient in exchange for diminished corporate concentration. Thirdly, one can endeavor to comprehend it and strategically position oneself within it. If complete detachment from the system is not feasible, then strive to derive benefit from it. Invest in the dominant corporations such as Exxon, Chevron, Amazon, Google, Pfizer, and JP Morgan. If the system's mechanism involves extracting wealth from the populace and concentrating it within these entities, then becoming an owner of these very entities is a logical recourse. This is precisely the strategy that Rockefeller himself employed. He possessed ownership of Standard Oil, while the populace consumed its products, thereby extracting wealth from the very system he architected. You can emulate this, not at his colossal scale, but in proportion to your capacity. Instead of being the subject of extraction, become an owner of the extractors. This is not financial counsel, it is an observation of established patterns. The Rockefeller system has perpetuated wealth concentration for 150 years and will continue to do so, as it is deeply ingrained within corporate statutes, tax regulations, and governmental oversight frameworks. To contend with it is a noble pursuit, yet it is undeniably arduous. To extricate oneself from it is a futile endeavor. To comprehend it and strategically align oneself within its confines is a pragmatic approach. John D. Rockefeller departed this world in 1937 at the venerable age of 97. His lifespan was sufficient to witness Standard Oil's eventual dissolution, its subsequent reconsolidation, and the widespread dissemination of its operational methodologies across virtually every industry. He lived long enough to observe his philanthropic foundation profoundly influence the trajectory of American medicine and education. He was present to see his grandchildren ascend to prominent positions within American finance and industry. He meticulously constructed a system that not only outlived him by a century, but is destined to endure far beyond our own existences. This system is characterized by vertical integration, horizontal consolidation, the formation of corporate trusts, regulatory capture, and the pervasive influence of philanthropy. Its genesis can be traced back to Standard Oil, and from there it expanded into steel, railroads, sugar, tobacco, and subsequently into the automotive, electronics, pharmaceutical, and technological sectors. Today, it exerts dominion over every facet of the economy, and escape is an impossibility. The only viable recourse is comprehension. Rockefeller famously stated, "Competition is a sin." While many interpret this as a declaration of avarice, Rockefeller's intent was theological. Competition is inherently wasteful, leading to duplicated efforts and the destruction of capital. Consolidation, conversely, is presented as righteous, fostering efficiency and serving consumers through reduced pricing. Monopoly, in this perspective, is not an act of larceny, but the natural and inevitable outcome of efficient markets. This was the fundamental worldview that underpinned Rockefeller's actions, and he systematically built a system to actualize it. 150 years later, we find ourselves living within that very framework. Amazon systematically eliminates retail competition, Google eradicates search alternatives, and Meta dispatches social media rivals. Oil production and distribution are controlled by entities like Exxon, Chevron, and BP. The pharmaceutical landscape is dominated by companies such as Pfizer, Merck, and Johnson & Johnson. The banking sector is largely governed by JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Citibank. The process of consolidation initiated by Rockefeller has reached its logical culmination, resulting not in a multitude of competing entities, but in a concentrated field of 3 to 5 dominant players within each industry, all adhering to Rockefeller's established blueprint. And this consolidation persists unabated. Each year, a diminishing number of corporations control an ever-increasing share of the market. Annually, the impediments to market entry become progressively more formidable, and each passing year, the system becomes more intractable to escape. This is the pervasive influence of the Rockefeller system, not merely Standard Oil itself, but the enduring methodology. This method is eternal because it consistently delivers results. If this presentation has revealed to you a system previously unseen, and if you now grasp that the corporate structures governing your daily existence were meticulously crafted by a single individual a century and a half ago, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel. For the initial step toward navigating any complex system is to understand it. While escape from the Rockefeller system may be impossible, the ability to perceive it is transformative, and seeing it fundamentally alters one's perspective. John D. Rockefeller engineered a system from which there appears to be no egress, a complex network of vertical integration, horizontal consolidation, regulatory capture, and philanthropic influence. This intricate system constitutes the very foundation of the modern economy, and it shapes your life on a daily basis. Welcome to the era defined by Rockefeller.